Forget everything you thought you knew about Roman warfare. You've heard about the legions, the shields, the marching columns, but that's only half the story. The other half was fought on water, on churning seas stained red with blood, on warships moving at ramming speed toward an enemy that ruled the waves for centuries. Rome didn't just conquer land. Rome conquered the ocean itself. And what happened out there, far from any shore, changed the ancient world forever. The year is to 64 BC. The Mediterranean Sea stretches vast and merciless. 2,000 miles of open water connecting 3 continents. The highway of the ancient world. The artery through which grain, gold, timber, and slaves flow. Whoever controls this sea controls everything. And right now, one power rules these waters without contest: Carthage. Perched on the northern coast of Africa, Carthage is the greatest maritime empire the world has ever seen. Their warships are engineering masterpieces. Their sailors are born on the water. Their admirals have spent lifetimes mastering currents. Their triremes-long, narrow warships powered by hundreds of oarsmen move like living creatures, turning on a coin, accelerating to ramming speed in seconds, punching bronze beaks through enemy hulls with enough force to split oak planking like paper. Carthage doesn't just sail the Mediterranean, they own it. And Rome? Rome is a landlocked republic of farmers and soldiers. A city built on 7 hills, surrounded by fields and roads. A culture that thinks in terms of dirt and stone and marching formations. Rome has no navy to speak of, no admirals, no sailors, no warships. And it's about to go to war with the greatest naval power. Most empires would call this suicide. Rome calls it opportunity. To understand what Rome is about to attempt, you need to understand what makes Rome different. Rome doesn't accept limitations. Other states look at Carthaginian naval supremacy and see an impenetrable wall. Rome looks at the same wall and asks, how do we knock it down? The answer comes into 61 BC, when a Carthaginian warship runs aground on the Italian coast. Rome captures it intact, and for the first time, Roman engineers get to study the greatest naval technology. They take it apart, piece by piece. They measure every timber, every joint, every curve of the hull. And then they do something audacious. Something that has never been done on this scale in all of human history. They copy it 220 times over. In 60 days, Rome builds an entire fleet from scratch. 23,000 men trained to row on wooden frames built inland. While the ships are still being constructed, it's the ancient world's equivalent of going from zero to aircraft carrier into months. But Rome knows something crucial. Their sailors will never be as skilled as Carthaginian veterans who've spent their lives on water. So Rome refuses to fight a naval battle the way Carthage fights naval battles. Instead, they invent something new, something terrifying, something that will change warfare at sea forever. The corvus, a spiked boarding bridge mounted on a rotating pole. At the bow of every Roman warship, counterweighted, spring-loaded, ready to drop. The concept is brutally simple. Carthage wins naval battles through superior seamanship, ramming, outmaneuvering, breaking oars, sinking ships. Rome can't match that skill. So Rome decides to change the game entirely. If you can't fight a sea battle, fight a land battle on the water. The corvus drops. Iron spike drives through enemy deck. The bridge locks. And suddenly, Roman legionaries, the most feared infantry, on earth come pouring across. A naval battle becomes the ground battle. And on the ground, nothing beats Rome. The Battle of Mylae to 60 BC. Rome's first major naval engagement in history. Admiral Gaius Duilius commands a fleet that, weeks earlier, barely knew how to row in a straight line. Against them, Carthage's veteran fleet, professional sailors, experienced captains, ships that have dominated these waters for generations. The Carthaginians aren't worried. They've fought landlubbers before. They close the distance, ready to execute the precise ramming maneuvers that have shattered enemy fleets for a century. Then the corvus drops, and everything changes. 50 Carthaginian ships captured, 14 sunk. Their admiral barely escapes with his life. Rome wins, decisively. For the first time in history, Carthage loses a naval battle. The Mediterranean trembles, but Rome isn't finished. 4 years later, at the Battle of Ecnomus, Rome assembles the largest naval force the ancient world has ever seen. 330 ships, 140,000 men. The battle that follows is, by some estimates, the largest naval engagement in all of human history. Carthage throws everything they have at Rome's fleet, and Rome smashes through them like a bronze fist. Through wooden planking, the First Punic War belongs to Rome. But victory on water is never permanent, because the sea is patient. And the sea teaches hard lessons to the arrogant. At Japana into 49 BC, Rome learns what happens when tactics replace strategy. What happens when a consul ignores the basics of seamanship and positions his fleet in confined waters, where the corvus is useless and Carthaginian maneuverability becomes everything. 93 Roman ships lost. 20,000 men drowned or captured. One of the worst naval defeats in Roman history. And Rome learns, as it always does, from blood, from failure, from the cold salt water swallowing its dead. The years pass like waves. Rome and Carthage grind each other down across decades of brutal warfare, not just on water, but on land, across Sicily, across Spain, across the burning sands of North Africa. But it's the sea that decides everything, because whoever controls the sea controls the supply lines, the grain ships, the troop transports, the reinforcements. Starve the enemy's army, and you don't need to defeat it on the battlefield. Rome learns this lesson with brutal efficiency at the siege of Lilybaeum. They don't smash through Carthaginian defenses. They simply surround the port, cut the supply lines, and wait. It takes years, but time is a weapon, and Rome wields it like no other civilization. By 41 BC, the First Punic War ends. Rome stands victorious. Sicily becomes Rome's first province, the first brick in an empire that will stretch from Britain to Mesopotamia. But the most decisive naval battle in Roman history hasn't been fought yet. It's coming, 200 years later, off the coast of Greece, in a bay called Actium, where two Romans will fight for the soul of Rome itself. 31 BC. The Roman Republic is dying. It's been dying for decades, consumed by civil wars that have soaked the ground from Gaul to Egypt with Roman blood. Now it comes down to two men, Mark Antony, Rome's greatest general, victor of a dozen campaigns, lover of Cleopatra, Queen of Egypt, commander of the most powerful fleet in the Eastern Mediterranean, Octavian Caesar's heir, cunning, patient, ruthless, backed by Rome's traditional power base. His admiral, Marcus Agrippa, is a naval genius. They meet at Actium, and this battle isn't just about ships. It's about what Rome will become. Empire or republic? East or west? Caesar's heir or Antony's dream of a Mediterranean monarchy ruled from Alexandria? Antony commands more ships, larger ships, Egyptian warships built like floating fortresses. But size isn't everything. Agrippa's fleet is faster, more maneuverable, his captains better trained, his strategy more ruthless. The battle begins. Agrippa doesn't try to smash Antony's fleet directly. He probes, pressures, draws ships out of formation, creates gaps in the line. And then, at the critical moment, Cleopatra's squadron breaks. 60 Egyptian ships turn and flee south. Running for open water, Antony, faced with an impossible choice, follows his queen, and his fleet, abandoned by its commander, collapses. In a single afternoon, the fate of the ancient world is decided. Not on land, not in the Senate, not through politics or assassination. On the water, at the end of oars and rams, and the desperate courage of sailors who never knew they were changing history, Octavian becomes Augustus, the first emperor of Rome. And Rome, the landlocked city of farmers and soldiers, becomes the undisputed master of an ocean-spanning empire. After Actium, the Mediterranean transforms. For the next 3 centuries, Roman warships patrol every sea lane, every coastline, every harbor from the Pillars of Hercules to the Bosphorus. Piracy, once a plague that had strangled Mediterranean trade, is eliminated. Earlier, a Roman general named Pompey had cleared the sea of pirates in just 40 days, a campaign so efficient it seemed impossible. Now, under Augustus and his successors, that peace becomes permanent. The Pax Romana, the Roman peace. Grain flows from Egypt to Rome, timber from the Levant to Spain, wine from Gaul to North Africa, silks from the east to the markets of Rome. An empire of 70 million people fed, supplied, and connected by Roman ships. The legions get the glory, the history books, the cinematic battles on open plains. But it's the navy that makes everything possible. Without Rome's maritime supremacy, the grain supply collapses, the army starves, the provinces fragment, the empire dissolves. The ships are the skeleton, the legions are just the muscle. And here's what history whispers that we rarely hear loud enough. Rome's greatest military innovations weren't land-based. They were maritime. The corvus taking a disadvantage and turning it into a weapon. The systematic supply chain across open water. The strategic use of naval blockades. The projection of military power beyond any army's reach. These ideas didn't die with Rome. They echo through every maritime empire that came after. Through Venice, through Spain, through Britain. Every nation that ever dominated the seas learned from the example Rome set in those bloody waters. 2,000 years ago, the Mediterranean still holds their secrets. Beneath its blue depths lie hundreds of Roman warships. Bronze rams, marble cargoes, the bones of sailors who gave everything for an empire they believed in. Occasionally, a fisherman's net drags something up. A bronze beak, a corroded sword, a fragment of an oar. Remnants of the fleet that built the world we live in stand at the edge of the Mediterranean today. Watch the water. It looks peaceful now. Pleasure boats, ferry crossings, cargo ships moving slowly on the horizon. But underneath that calm surface, history sleeps. The ghosts of triremes still move through the deep. The echo of bronze against bronze still vibrates in the salt water. The shouts of Roman sailors, the crack of breaking oars, the thunder of the corvus driving its spike into Carthaginian deck. All of it is still there, because some moments are too powerful to simply pass. Rome looked at an ocean it couldn't control, built a fleet from nothing, invented new ways of fighting, suffered catastrophic defeats, learned from every failure, and ultimately conquered the sea itself. Not through invincibility, through relentless, bloody, brilliant refusal to accept that anything was impossible. That's not just Roman history. That's the blueprint for every empire, every civilization, every individual who ever refused to accept that anything was impossible. The legions built roads, but the Navy built an empire. And the Mediterranean Sea has never forgotten the sound of Roman oars. If you love cinematic history stories like this, like, share, and subscribe for more legendary tales from civilizations that changed the world. Because the greatest stories aren't always the ones you were taught. Sometimes the truth is buried beneath the waves.